Okay, so as usual, we have all of our folks coming into the room and joining us. Welcome back, everyone, and Happy New Year. Happy 2021. We haven't seen you since last year. It seems like a long time, but it really isn't. And we want to welcome all of you and get started right away. As you know, we have America's psychologist here with us. We have Dr. Jeffrey Gardia, who will be presenting for us today. And we are so excited to hear everything that he has to share with us and everything that he's going to provide us, and so that we can have a conversation and think about what we need to do to make sure that everyone is socially and emotionally supported. For those of you who do not know, Dr. Jeff Gardia is America's psychologist. So he is all of our doctor. He will support all of us. And so Dr. Jeff is one of the most widely sought after experts in the field of mental health. In addition to having a private practice in Manhattan, he is an associate professor and course director of behavioral medicine at Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine in New York City. Dr. Jeff is also an ordained interfaith minister with a doctorate in divinity from the New Seminary. Dr. Jeff Gardia, better known as America's psychologist, is also a prolific author of 4 books and a contributing author of a half dozen books, including brand new texts, The Causes of Autism. In addition to being a respected academia, Dr. Jeff has been a contributor to the Fox Network, the Today Show, MSNBC, and CNN. Dr. Jeff was the host of VH1's Dad Camp and recently was the psychologist on the Housewives of Atlanta. Let's give him a round of applause for surviving that one. I saw that episode. And he is also the aftercare coordinator and psychologist for Lauren Lake's Paternity Court. Dr. Jeff, thank you for joining us today. And I have to say, you need all of those credentials to know someone like me. So I'm glad. No, you need the credentials in the psychology area, and you need to be an ordained minister just to deal with Monica. So it's a good thing you have all of that under your belt. Thank you and welcome. So we have many people coming in, and we're sure that more will come. Everyone, as you can see, Dr. Bennett Conroy is with us, and down at the bottom, Dr. Gorman is with us from Mount Vernon City School District, and we're going to just jump to Dr. Jeff so that he can get started.
All right. Thank you so much, Monica. You are the best. Thank you, Dr. BC. Thank you, Dr. Gorman. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. And I know people will be coming in. If I look over in that direction, it doesn't mean that I have ADHD or that I'm not interested. I actually, and Dr. Gorman might appreciate this, some kids never grow up. I actually have 4 screens, usually a 5th screen in front of me. So I'm able to see everyone on one screen. I'm able to see, you on one screen. Monica, I'm able to see a screen with the presentation. I have another screen with the chat. I figured, if you can't beat them, join them. I'd rather be in person, face to face, in the flesh. But if we're doing this online, then darn it, let's do it with gusto, right?
That's right.
And I have a lot of good friends actually who are joining us, and a lot of folks that I've met from Mount Vernon. I love Mount Vernon. I love the area. I know that you all are going through some things now with COVID and transmission rates, and we'll talk about that and what's going on with the schools. But know that we are all behind you. Mount Vernon is so historical and so important in everything that has happened, and leads the nation in the determination to educate their students, whether it be in person, whether it be online. So thank you all for everything that you do. For those of you about to get your COVID shots, it'll be okay. All right. I don't think, a lot of folks are a little bit afraid, but, we got to do what we got to do to protect the children, protect the parents, protect, ourselves. So good luck with that. I'm about to take it on Friday. So, it'll be interesting. Some of you have taken it, I know. All right, let me see if I can share this screen and do it properly. Hold on one second. All right. And then we do share screen and
We can see your screen.
okay, now
Oh, no, you just switched it to the presenter's view.
all right, so then let's flip the script and trick the devil.
Ha, ha, ha.
How about now?
All right. I didn't know that trick. I just
All
learned
right.
something new.
There you are. Yeah, we got to learn it as we go along, All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining me. Today, we'll be talking about the social and emotional supports for our children, parents, and teachers. This is in partnership with Dr. Monica and Reach Educational Solutions. They're always reaching for the right solutions. All right. So we know there's a whole lot going on. We are a nation in crisis right now. We have social and emotional supports that I want to share with you for our kids, for our parents, for our teachers. But we're dealing with COVID, as you know, still in the middle of a pandemic. And we know there are other strains that are coming out and that will be coming out that are starting to circulate around the globe. We are getting a few cases here in the United States right now, a variant on the actual virus. We're dealing with an increase in white supremacy, and I'll share with you all in just a little bit some of the stats as to what's going on with that. Of course, the horrible killing of George Floyd, which got a lot of people woke, as our kids like to say, Monica, as to what we perhaps, had gotten used to and certainly had been so tired of, but things were just going on as they were going on. But certainly COVID-19 made us pull the hood off of a lot of racism and bias and implicit bias that had become really part of our systemic and institutional racism, and that we just were not addressing in the way that should be addressed. But I think with the killing of George Floyd, it actually brought out so much empathy in everyone that, unlike the civil rights protests in the 60s and a little bit later, where we saw, primarily African-American people, here we saw Black, brown, white people all together, all sexualities. That means as a society, we really do need to come together and address this issue that plagues us. We have a president who has been impeached twice. That's quite a record to have, and something that I'm sure is going to hurt his branding, if you know what I mean, right? He's so concerned about the Trump brand. Boy, that's going to hurt the Trump brand. Insurrection going on. We saw what happened with the Capitol. Not this past Wednesday, the Wednesday before. And certainly that is something that has a lot of us concerned about the reemergence of QAnon and white supremacy, and really the safety for all of us, especially those of us who are Black and brown and have gone through this period too many times in history before. So all of those things are weighing on our minds, and unemployment, of course, and I'll talk about those numbers in a minute. So what do we tend to see with the numbers? What is happening right now? Well, we know that white supremacy is on the rise since 2016. That intersects with the president being elected, and has increased almost 50% from 2016 to where we are today in 2021. Unemployment rates at 6.7%, which has been catastrophic for so many. With regard to police brutality, a couple of studies out. One study that I looked at predicts that 1 in 2,000 men and 1 in 33,000 women die as a result of police use of deadly force. But the same study predicts that the risk is highest for Black men because they are 1 in 1,000. And there is a group that has an even higher rate. I don't know if anyone knows what it is. Perhaps they want to put it into a chat there. There is a number 2 would be Latinx, but does anyone know what one of the highest rates happens to be?
I think I know what it is, but I'll let people try to respond in the
Let them
chat.
try to respond to that.
Okay, well, so we're getting LGBTQ.
That's very high.
Transgender.
Yes, very, very close. We call those folks the invisible folks, in that there aren't enough statistics on them. But there's another group that matches them, if not even higher rates than anyone else. Senior citizens, no, but they are at the higher rates for COVID. And COVID, we're seeing right now. We'll get the right answer. We're seeing right now that Black men. Yep, but we said that that's the highest rate. Well, I might as well tell you what.
I'm going to tell you. Wait, I'm gonna put it in the chat.
All right,
let's see if
you got it, Monica. That's it. Native Americans.
Woo! I know that. I know that statistic.
That's right. That's right. And a lot of people don't talk about that. But Native Americans, my goodness, practically wiped off, the face of America, which was their native land. Put into reservations, not allowed to practice their religion, high rates of alcoholism because of the post-traumatic stress, but also just as high in numbers with regard to deadly police force. By the way, I'm not painting with a broad brush with our police officers. We know there are some, a lot of very good police officers, but all it takes is one bad apple to make it difficult for everyone else, fellow police officers, but especially some of the groups that we talked about here. COVID rates, we have 22 million cases in the United States, total deaths at 397,255. Again, rates are high for Native Americans, Black Americans, and Latinx. So it's really tough. And Black and brown people, of course, have been disproportionately affected due to health disparities from systemic racism, distrust of the medical community because of Tuskegee experiments and how Black and brown people were used with regard to many of the medications working with those particular groups. So it's been very, very difficult. Now, I want to play this for you. If it doesn't play, I'll just explain what it is. But, we want to keep people awake. So sometimes playing a little video, it's a trick Monica taught me a couple of years ago. Playing a little video always helps, because we want to talk about our first group. We said we talk about kids, we talk about parents, we're going to talk about teachers. Saturday at our Monica May Talk With You about the big conference that she's having, we're going to put in a fourth group, which will be administrators, school administrators. But here we go. I hope this plays, and let's see what happens.
Share your sound?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Do I need to share it, or you can share it?
You can share it. You have to click share your sound inside the share screen.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I did not know that. Can you do it?
No, you have to do it because it's playing off of your computer. So go to share screen, just click on the green and make sure those two boxes down at the bottom are clicked off, are clicked.
All right. So I see you are screen sharing, right? And then where do I go?
Pull up screen share, and then you'll see the two boxes down at the very bottom of that white space, and it says share computer sound.
Huh, I don't see it.
Stop sharing then.
Oh, then if I stop sharing, but if I stop sharing, what happens?
It'll just show us.
Yeah.
You should stop sharing and then reshare.
And then reshare. But click off
click those two boxes.
Just to
Got it.
make sure that we can hear the
And
sound
then
of the
should I
video.
optimize for video clip?
Oh, you did. Did you optimize for the sound?
I put share sound, and should I hit optimize for video?
Oh, so that's good. You good.
All right, so I'm going to go back to share.
Yep. We're here. We can see it. You're sharing already.
Okay. All right, let's see if it works.
Okay.
We turn our attention now to teens in
Can you hear it?
as COVID-19 rates continue to surge.
Yes.
With a warning, social isolation could be taking a serious toll on the mental health of teens nationwide. Today, Daily Mail TV is taking a sobering look at the crisis, putting students at risk, and what parents really need to know.
I don't even feel like I want to go to school anymore.
As remote learning, extended shutdowns, and strict social distancing continues to be the norm, teens nationwide are feeling the impact of pandemic isolation. 14-year-old Ava Segrist, a hybrid student at a New Jersey high school, says COVID safety protocols have made her freshman year a challenge.
In person, it's worse because you just have to wear the mask and you can't really socialize with anyone.
Ava and her 13-year-old sister Emma, both lacrosse players, say they miss seeing their friends on and off the field.
You're a teenager. I don't want to hang out with my family. I want to hang out with my friends.
I usually communicate with my friends through text, Snapchat, Instagram, FaceTime.
Emma and Ava's mom, Nicole, says she's concerned about the long-term consequences COVID isolation can have on her teens' well-being.
Are they going to feel comfortable socially after this? Are they going to feel anxious? Are they going to always feel isolated after this? I don't want it to affect them in the future.
Teenagers, adolescents, young people are really imploding psychologically.
Dr. Jeffrey Gardier explains why he believes COVID lockdowns are taking an especially hard toll on teens and their mental health.
Some of the rituals of being young, going to the prom, enjoying football games, children are not learning how to develop their interpersonal skills. We're finding much more anxiety, irritability, some depression.
A newly released study entitled Are the Kids All Right? Finds teens are experiencing tremendous loss due to school closures and social isolation.
All my days are kind of the same.
Aiden Hubbard, a 15-year-old sophomore from New York, says he struggles to stay focused during online classes.
Pretty much in every class, my phone is off to the side, and I'm texting my friends who are in that class, because that's the only way I can actually communicate with them.
A COVID lockdown situation in Maine recently turned tragic when a 16-year-old struggled with isolation reportedly ended in suicide.
We didn't see the pain that apparently he was in.
Aspiring lineman Spencer Smith reportedly left behind a note telling his parents he felt locked in the house.
Parents need to really listen to what it is that their kids are saying, especially the loneliness, especially complaining about not being with friends. Those are surefire signs that their kids are suffering at the present time.
As COVID rates surge and new lockdowns loom, Dr. Gardier has this advice for parents.
It's important that we give them tools, encourage them to join online groups or even support groups where they're talking to other kids. Spend more time with the kids with regard to activities, having fun. Those sorts of things are very, very important because it engages and lets the child know that they do have a family who really cares.
For mental health resources, you can visit the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at aacap.org. And if you feel you're in a crisis this moment, right now, you can go to crisistextline.org or text.
All right. Well, there we go. All right. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
All right. And I'm sorry that the volume was low. My apologies for that. And can you still see my picture, by the way?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So there are other issues going on too. We know that our children are dealing with issues with the internet. Many of them don't have updated computers. Some have had problems with IT. I know a lot of the parents have been IT challenged and not able to help the kids. I know I've been dealing with a lot of kids who have, who are learning delayed. and who have other sorts of issues around learning or ADD or ADHD. And therefore, learning online has been a real problem for them because they have not been able to focus in on just the computer. And as the segment showed, no graduations, no proms are really hurting our kids because it is taking away any kind of normalcy with regard to what it is that they had with regard to growing up. Another recent study of 3,330 high school students found that nearly 30% reported feeling unhappy or depressed in recent months. And a recent CDC report showed that children's mental health related emergency room visits increased during the pandemic. So all of that to say to you, please be aware that even if your kids are not complaining, even if they seem like everything is okay, even if they are just not really talking with you about some of the issues they have, or you think that your kids are resilient, that doesn't mean that they're not suffering. I can tell you as a father of many children, teenagers who are very much isolating themselves, losing social skills, very young children who are having temper tantrums all the time. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in a pandemic and our kids are suffering. So we have to address what it is that's going on. So some of the things that I talked about in the Daily Mail clip, certainly you can do, making sure that they know that their family supports them, that you're doing a lot of activities together as part of a family. But the most important thing you can do is be a good listener. That's a core competency skill because sometimes your kids will talk to you. They're not saying the words that I feel isolated, that I feel depressed, that I feel like I want to hurt myself, but they may say it in very different ways. You know your children. Read their body language. Listen to what it is that they're saying that they're losing interest in, or hobbies that they're no longer doing, or if they don't want to see their friends. That's telling you that something is really wrong. If they're playing too many video games and they're just not concentrating on their schoolwork, the things that they're doing on the web happen to be mindless, then limit that screen time. Of course, I know they want a little TikTok time, but they don't have to spend hours and hours on that. And it takes time away from the things that they need to do, especially now with online learning, hybrid with going to school and online. Increase their exercise because they're not getting to the gyms anymore. Maybe they're not getting to the gyms at school. So take walks together with them. Have them walk the dog. That's my favorite. I have 2 dogs. I'm tired of walking those dogs. So, hey, girlie, get some exercise. Hang out with your dogs, as I say to my daughter. Riding bikes, if you can still find bikes. Can you believe that bikes are very hard to come by now? Nurture your child's self-esteem by giving them tasks to do in the house and reward their good behavior. That keeps them vital. It keeps them present. It keeps their focus on being alive and looking for a new discipline in their lives, especially if they can't be with their friends all the time in person. And if they need help, make sure that they get online counseling or get counseling from school. And I know that some of the school counselors are also doing telepsychology, teletherapy, and some sort of play therapy. Now, we also know that race in America is something that is reemerged as, again, a real issue. It never went away, but it's important that we deal with it. Most Americans, 58%, say race relations in the U.S. are generally bad. It's a view that's held by majorities across racial and ethnic groups. 71% of Blacks, considerably more likely than whites, 56%, and Latinx, 60%, express negative views about the state of race relations, especially now in this time of insurrection that we're seeing. It is more important that we talk with our kids about politics and race. Teach our children about structural racism. Do you know what I mean by structural racism? Structural racism, it's not just about, oh, there are some people who are prejudiced, some people who are racist, or some people about implicit bias, and this is a relic from slavery, or it's something that, still hangs around. And, there are some, there are whole factions of society who are not racist, and this is just an individual thing. You have to understand that racism has been built into American process. It's been built into American government. It is part and parcel of what keeps having, upper class, middle class, lower class, white privilege. All of those things are real. It's not my opinion. It's not my trying to be clinical. If you study political science, you know that racism is racialized within our system. It's radicalized within our system. So you shouldn't be surprised as to what happened in the Capitol, what's going on with different groups, what's going on with extreme members of the GOP and so on, why some senators won't wear masks. So, understand that this is something that is scientific. Your kids need to know what it means so they can address it in their lives. And I'm not just talking about Black and brown kids. I'm talking about Black, brown, white, Asian American. Everyone needs to know what the history of racism is and how it continues to mutate. Have open and honest conversations with your kids, especially about prejudice and social justice and oppression, and what they can do to address it, how they can learn to respect other people, and how they can learn the difference between love and hate, because essentially, in our divided nation, we had leaders who were leading by using hate, not decency, respect, and love. For parents, I know that many of you are working from home. Many of you as teachers work from home. Then you have to go to the school setting. But if you're working from home, we know that's a big issue. You have to do your occupation. You have to work in front of your computer. You have to babysit. You have to walk dogs. You have to teach your kids. You have to do the housekeeping. You have to do the cooking. Hey, I know about it because that's my life. I lost 10 pounds doing all of this stuff. I'm glad I lost the weight, but it's a lot of stuff. For those of you who are working on site, you are much more exposed to COVID, especially if you are frontline workers. So that in itself is a stressor. So we know all of these things, the crisis in America, your life being turned upside down by COVID, whether you have to work at home, whether you're working frontline. So a lot of us are demoralized. A lot of us have pain. A lot of us are frustrated, overwhelmed. A lot of us have unresolved grief about our lives and people that we've lost, and a lot of fears around getting COVID-19 and our loved ones getting COVID-19. We also know that many of us are dealing with anxiety, fear, flashback, intrusive thoughts, avoidance behaviors, nightmares, all of the things that are part of PTSD. Now, some of us have that idea that we're no ways tired, right? Because that's where we come from. We just have to keep on keeping on. We still have to push through. I know that's the way I feel. I know that's the way Monica feels. I know that's the way many of you feel. But you've got to understand that you have to be able to look inside yourself and understand that you are affected by a world that has been turned upside down. If you don't, you may be having some of these physical reactions, feeling out of it. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with, adults, who are having panic attacks, who are having anxiety attacks that they've never had before, aches, headaches, grinding teeth. As a matter of fact, many people are going to see their dentists because they're having that anxiety and they're grinding their teeth at night. And by the way, even though you have great dentists in Mount Vernon, you know, finding a good dentist is like pulling teeth. They have upset stomach, diarrhea, indigestion, acid reflux, increase or loss of appetite, eating a lot of carbohydrates, problems sleeping, a lot of drinking, racing heart, tiredness, exhaustion, sexual difficulties. All of those things is your body's way of saying, hey, listen, you can run, but you can't hide. Okay. If you're having stress, you've got to deal with it. So one of the things that you can do to do an assessment as to what's going on, and Monica will post this for you at some point. And Monica, maybe you could put it into the chat. It's called BeMindfulOnline.com. Okay, BeMindfulOnline.com. Once you get in there, go to test your stress. It asks you the questions that are in front of you. For the sake of time, I'll just read one or two. Have you been upset because of something that happened unexpectedly? I have. The Capitol. Felt that you were unable to control important things in your life. I have. I can't even get my mail since Louis DeJoy came in, and a lot of the mailboxes have been taken out, and a lot of the machines have been taken out because of voter suppression. Felt nervous and stressed. I have. I go to bed every night like this. I wake up every morning like this. That's the world that we're in. Anyway, it's going to help you with all of these questions. Once you answer them, then it will give you a score. Scores ranging from 0 to 13, considered low stress, then it's okay. Moderate stress, 14 to 26. Be careful with that because it can easily turn into higher perceived stress. And a new study showed they looked at 2,000 adults. And out of those 2,000 adults in 2020, 1 in 6 went to therapy. That is unprecedented. Now, of course, it put more money in my pocket and it allowed me to buy new shoes for my 6 children, but it's not a good thing for the rest of us. But if you need therapy, for heaven's sake, go to therapy, and it's there. And I'm glad people are going to therapy. I'm just sorry they have to go under these sorts of conditions. So what do you need to do? We talked about what the kids can do. Let's talk about what adults can do. Stay informed, but learn to limit your screen time and exposure to the media. Of course, as you can tell, I watch MSNBC. I watch maybe Joy Reid. Maybe I watch Rachel Maddow, and that's about it. Can't take any more because my head will explode. Address your finances. Yes, no shame in your game. A lot of us have not done well because of the pandemic, but don't be afraid to check your accounts every day. Don't be afraid to talk to your creditors. Don't be afraid to try to get some help in paying the rent. And yes, I know the rent is too damn high. Take care of your health. That means even in the pandemic, especially with the pandemic, please talk to your healthcare provider. Get moving, exercise. I love the Peloton. Some of you don't have the Peloton. Listen, hit the floor, do 100 sit-ups, do about 20 push-ups, do something every day. Take a walk. It's important to keep the juices flowing. Give yourself a routine. Set your alarm to wake up every morning at the same time and make sure you go to bed at the same time. Shower and change your clothes daily. You can't hang out in your pajama pants, your jogging pants all day. Dress like you have nowhere to go, all dressed up with nowhere to go, but you're going into the world through your computers. Take a lunch break, which is important. No drinking alcoholic beverages at work just because you don't have to drive. Keep a clean workstation. Believe it or not, because of my OCD, I keep a very clean workstation. Don't work in bed. Don't lay in bed until nighttime. Don't eat, play games, or lounge in your workstation. It's about the work. And instruct your kids to do the same. I know for those of you who are multitasking, where you're wearing all those different hats, have family meetings. Communicate the rules of the house. Communicate procedures, how things should be working, because you can't do it by yourself. Go over all the projects that need to be done in the house and make sure that you talk about COVID protection when people are coming into your house, who needs to wear a mask. An orderly house leads to an orderly mind. And all hands on deck. Everyone should be helping out. It shouldn't be just one person doing everything. In my family, everybody works and they don't get paid. All right? Assign tasks, hand out checklists. Teachers, for those of you, your unique challenges. Mount Vernon, I know that you've had perhaps some folks who have died from COVID, not as many as New York City. New York City had 72 people who died from coronavirus. This is according to the Department of Education. Thus far, 21 teachers, 22 paraprofessionals, 2 administrators, a guidance counselor, food service workers, 2 central office employees. So teachers, what do you need to do? Stay in touch with your colleagues. Talk to them. You know that they are a second family. Stay in contact with the parents and students, because the students are stuck between a rock and a hard place. They support you in that you may not want to work at the work site because you are going to be much more at risk for COVID-19. It's, we know, not to point fingers at the kids, but a lot of our kids are the ones who are actually spreading it because they're not like us old fogies. We know we're much more careful. We know how to be, wear our masks and so on. Kids are kids. They want to hang out and so on. But, even though kids can die from COVID, kids can get really sick from COVID. When you look at the numbers, it's really the adults and older adults and senior citizens like myself who have really died from COVID. So please, we all need to be on the same page. We all need to support one another in whatever decisions we make. We are a family. We are a team. We shouldn't be at odds with one another. We can work it out, as the Beatles said. Take the time to grieve those people who have gotten sick and who have died. Celebrate the lives of your colleagues who have succumbed. Informal staff and teacher support groups are so important. You can do that online if you can't do it in person, and talk to friends and family about your emotions. And if you need help, Telehealth is there. If your symptoms don't ease up, if you're having trouble completing simple chores at home, if you're experiencing sadness, anxiety, severe fear, and it's not going away, anxiety attacks, unable to connect with your loved ones, your relationships are falling apart, you're having nightmares, thoughts, or dysfunctional or very disturbing thoughts or flashbacks. Remember, this is part of a PTSD. Avoiding things around COVID-19, drinking way too much, taking, doing a little bit too much of the other stuff. Please, it's important that you reach out. Telehealth is big, 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 big right now. And don't forget the support team, food service custodians, security, frontline workers. They have anxiety. They are challenged. And let's not forget that group. Thank you, Crystal Ballard, for telling us about that, because they are the superheroes, but they are not superhuman. So you all take care of yourselves, and let's make sure we take care of them too. Okay? And there's my information in case you need it, drjeffgardier@gmail.com. There's my phone number. Feel free to call it at any time. All right, let me stop the share. And I am back.
Great. Thank you for that. So I have a bunch of questions, and I want to encourage the participants to please put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A, because we wanted to end the presentation a little earlier so that you have an opportunity. Not always will you have an opportunity to talk to or ask questions of America's psychologists. So we want to take advantage of that. So first thing I was thinking about when you were talking about the students is how young is too young for parents or for families to have conversations with children about what's going on, either with the pandemic or the racial tension that's occurring in our country at this time. The kids are seeing it on the television, right? So if they're in the room and if the television is on, they're hearing it. They may not know everything or be able to understand it, but they do hear what's going on. And I even experienced that this summer with my grandson, who at that time was 9. They were talking about George Floyd, and he said, he said, "Grandma," and I turned around and I said, "Yes," and he said, "I'm afraid." And I don't know what he exactly saw or heard that made him say that to me in the moment, but I know what was on television, and it was all about the protests. And so they're in the room. What age group or age range should families think about having these conversations with their children?
I would say as soon as you think that your child can really comprehend language, at least a full sentence, then they know what is going on, not necessarily about the Capitol or not necessarily about George Floyd, but they read our emotions. They know that we're upset. They know when we're crying. They know that when we're angry. So of course you have to be age appropriate in the conversations that you have. For a 5-year-old, it's really, and keeping it positive as much as possible, by the way. For a 5-year-old, it might be about the importance of respect and love. It might be about but a 4 or 5-year-old doesn't really understand the concept of death, but they can understand the concept of respect or being nice to other people. And therefore, that's the lesson you can begin with them. And that not everyone may be nice to them, but they should be nice with others. And if others are not nice with them, who can they talk to? Please share Dr. Jeff's email again. I'll put that in while we're speaking. Or Monica, if you want to put that.
I'll put that in.
Okay. For the older kids, it's about listening to what it is that they want to know, because this stuff is everywhere. There is no escaping it. There is no running from it. I hear kids talking about it all the time, all ages. But the way that we talk to them about it, I said you have to be positive. It's not about Chicken Little, the world is falling apart, because then that begins to scare them and it makes them pessimistic. It's what can we all do? What can we step up and do in order to change the world? How do we need to be more diligent about the importance of respect for others and civil rights, and why addressing racism and bias is so important, and what microaggressions mean and what people may say to them and what's the best way to deal with it. And if you ever we're going to have the talk with your child, the talk about, how to handle yourself around law enforcement. Now it's important, but also empowering our kids to understand if something doesn't look right, to be careful, to not just trust any particular person, because we know there are a lot of manipulations going on. We know that there's, trickery that's going on. So it really is important for them to stay close to the family and close to those people that they know are good friends. But more than anything else, again, how we handle the conversation, the positivity of it, not seeing ourselves as victims, but having to step up and being able to address racism and bias. And as I said, begin teaching them about the history of slavery, of racism all over the globe, but especially here in America.
And then we have a question from a parent about asking you to talk a little bit more about managing children who have attention deficits.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we know that a lot of children are spending time home and they're not able to go outside as much or as often. And so what tips can parents who have children who are active, very active, what tips can you provide them for managing their children at home?
Okay. 2 things. First and foremost, you need to understand, because of the pandemic, we may not see it. That's why I like the stress test. I gave you the information to go ahead and take. We may not realize that our tempers are very, very short. Our frustration thresholds are very short. And therefore, when our kids who may have ADD or, what was ADHD, begin to really start running around the house, and now it's going to be made, much more difficult for them because they can't go outside as much. They're not going to school as much. They can't burn off that energy. Then they may not be sitting in front of that computer. We know this for kids who are on the spectrum also. They're not going to sit in front of a computer like other kids, to get their online instruction as much. So therefore, we as parents have to really try to get them to focus. We are going to lose our tempers. We're going to yell at them. We're going to, hopefully we're not going to raise a hand to them, but we need to understand that because we are frustrated with what's going on in the world, we can't take it out on our kids. If it means counting to 50, if it means taking a walk outside, if it means taking them on a walk outside, if it means distracting them by, handing them a book or, giving them, a toy to play with that they really enjoy, an educational toy, or singing a song to them, whatever it takes, just be kind to them because those kids are really suffering right now. All kids are suffering, but those kids are really suffering right now because let's face it, school is the best thing that ever happened to all of our kids, but especially our kids who have extra challenges because they have the structure of the school. They have special education. They have teachers like you who care. And it gives us as parents a bit of a break because we don't have to, address it all day long. Now we have to work at home, deal with all of those challenges. And notice the language, ladies and gentlemen, that I've been using. I don't use fear. I don't use anger so much. I use the word challenges because language really can direct what our behavior will be. So I'm not scared as to what's going on in society, but it's a challenge, right? I'm not so frustrated with my kids who may be acting out, but I am challenged by it. And so the way that we react to it, the way that we perceive it, using that proper language or different language, positive language is so important. But please just keep loving those kids because let me tell you, you think you're going through it? I'm telling you, the kids are going through it as much as you are, if not even worse. Think about it. They have a childhood that has been completely interrupted by social unrest, by COVID-19, by racism and bias, and everything going on in the world right now. This is the toughest time for our kids. They can't really be with their friends. They can't do the things that kids do. They can't go to graduations. They can't go to prom. They can't go to school. Kids love school, by the way. Don't ever forget that. They can't be with their friends at school. So this is unprecedented what we're going through, but the way that we handle it, remember Teen Rebellion? Remember that's all we used to have to deal with our kids? Now
Yes.
this is going to be going on for years. And we used to tell you the way you handle that Teen Rebellion, the way you as an adult handle it, because all kids have Teen Rebellion or most kids have Teen Rebellion, that will shepherd them through. So stay calm, be positive, just do your best.
There's another question about the Be Mindful test. Is that just for adults or can children take that stress test as well?
I think it's for adults,
Okay.
18 and above. There may be things for kids, but you can do a search on that and see what's there for you. By the way, there is a part of that test where you go even further in and it asks you for money to give you. Listen, I'm not trying to hurt anybody's business. I'm a capitalist, but just get the results of the test and go from there. I don't think you have to go further and start paying money unless it's something you want to do.
Okay. And then we have a question about a parent who had difficulty with her child and took the child's phone as a punishment. And then the child stopped eating for 3 days and did not get out of bed. So we have that question. And then
Well, let's just deal with that question because that's serious. What that tells me is that's a child who's addicted to their device. But guess what? Many of our children are addicted to their device. It's not anyone's fault in these days and times. Look, I can't tell you how many times I've said, I'm on a conference, take my phone, go to Pete the Cat. They love Pete the Cat, by the way. You know, I got my red shoes. Every time I sing that, my 4-year-old goes like this. So you have to be careful with that. Taking things away is the way to do it instead of hitting your child or screaming at your child, especially if you think they're addicted. But instead of taking it away for a full day, which may be too much, perhaps you take it away for an hour or two and then give it back. I did that with my daughter. I took it away for about 8 hours and then I gave it back to her the next day. That's one thing. The second thing is if your child was in bed for 3 days, there may have been something else going on, which might have been a clinical depression. So for the parent who sent that, it's really important that you have your child evaluated, okay? When our kids are doing that, when you see that they're isolating themselves, when they're crying, when they're not doing the things that they used to do, previous things that they had pleasure in, they're no longer taking pleasure in that. If they're not talking about the future, if they're staying in bed, if they're sleeping a lot more, or they can't sleep enough, that may be a sure sign of anxiety or depression. Please have them evaluated. Talk to a mental health professional, talk to your school counselor, but kids are going through it. Unprecedented levels of anxiety and depression because of COVID.
Yeah, I see. There's a question before this about adults, and I do want to transition a conversation around adults, but there is a comment about how do we how do we monitor how much screen time children have on phones and other devices, but that is the way that they are socializing with their friends. And I know you have some feedback for adults, and I'm just going to offer this because now that with I talk about my grandson often because that's my point of reference, but I had gotten some reports back from his teachers recently that he is now not as engaged in remote learning as he was before, and he's starting to put the screen camera up on the ceiling and not going to bathroom breaks a lot and other things like that. And so immediately I thought, let me take the phone away. But that's his only time that he has to socialize with his friends that he used to see face to face. So I didn't want to do that completely. I did it in the beginning, but it seemed so punitive that I didn't think that was the best thing to do. So what I've done is I created a very simple checklist, and it has 2 columns, one for my grandson and one for the teacher. And there are 5 or 6 simple things that he has to do while he is home for remote learning. So when he's on hybrid, when he's at home and he has to learn from home, there are 5 or 6 things. The teacher has it, and he needs to get a check he needs to self-evaluate, and then his teacher can give him check marks for not putting the screen up, not making too many bathroom breaks, focusing on a lesson rather than turning to the side. Those types of things. It's very simple. And depending on how many points he earns for the day determines how long he's able to use his phone. So I never take it completely, but the lowest amount of points he earns can just get him 20 minutes to play on the phone, a game on the phone with his cousin or godbrother or friend. But all of the points in both columns will get him maybe an hour and a half or something like that after he does his homework and other things. So it's a way to not be so punitive, but also tell him what's important, and then also have him self-monitor as well. And so the very first day, his teacher gave him points, but he didn't give himself points. And he said, oh, am I supposed to? I said, well, do you think you did well in all of these areas? He said, I think I did, but it made him start to think. And so now every day he's very interested in counting up how many points he has, and then knowing that determines how long he gets to play his games on the phone. So that was just something that I wanted to offer that I did, and I found that it worked.
I think it's absolutely brilliant, and many people are saying that they think it's a wonderful idea. I also, if you remember, Monica, I talked about doing, doing something about the rules, in the house. What are the procedures? So one of the things that we do here is we put on a schedule when you can play with your device. And if you give them some decent time on it, they'll know. But all the rules are written out. It's really important that your family understand what the flow of the day is all about, right down to the time that you're eating. You used to do that a lot, military families. But we're in the war of our lives right now, so not a bad idea. But that's a brilliant idea you gave, Dr. Monica. Thank you. I'm going to put that in my next PowerPoint. Thank you.
I'll share it with you.
Thank you.
So transitioning to adults and being kind to themselves. What's the adults are having difficult times, like being forgiven and like with their own situations and how they're struggling. The comment prior to the comment about the child was about keeping faith with everything that's happening, that adults are struggling with the balance between work and home. And they're struggling with that. What suggestions could you give them?
Not to be so hard on yourself. Do the best that you can do in raising your family. Do the best that you can do in bringing in the money. Do the best that you can do in keeping up your health. But one of the things that I find that some of my patients do is when they miss a workout or when they didn't get the work done that they needed, they just kind of give up for a couple of days and say, well, it's not going to work anyway. And therefore I'm going to drink more and I'm going to eat more and I'm going to do the things that are unhealthy. So, if things don't flow the way that you want them to flow on a particular day, that's okay. That's okay. Just change it up and do it better tomorrow. Tomorrow's a new day. Don't dwell about what went wrong the day before. You've got to find a way to be able to be much more fluid in doing the things that you're doing. Again, this is uncharted territory. This is something that we've never dealt with in our years, a once in a 100-year situation. And we see that it's the perfect storm, going from a pandemic to going to, dealing as we should have been with racism and bias. And now once again, dealing with police brutality and dealing with socioeconomic issues and dealing with a changing virus and dealing with all of the political upheaval. I mean, it seems like everything is coalescing. Everything is happening at one time. So, there should be no shame in your game. Be able to every day figure out something else that can get you through, a day at a time, a step at a time, minute by minute.
So we don't have Dr. Hamilton for the last half hour, who would normally do the questions and answers for parents and families based on other questions that they may have about what's happening at the district. And so I'm just going to ask you one last thing.
Sure, of
We
course.
talked a lot about how we have to kind of get students or children and families and adults and teenagers, everyone, to be mindful of their environment and the people around them. But we also, when we were younger, we were told that if you feel unsafe, go to someone in uniform, right? And that could be a postal or a bus driver, the police officers. Really, it was the police officer, the firemen. And we still want our children to feel comfortable going to our police officers, because they're not all a part of that group that is having difficulty serving and protecting all of the people in the community. Not all of our law enforcement are having that difficulty. How do we have conversations with students where with children, and how do we get over and get past that initial fear to figure out is this safe? Is this okay? Because there are probably many, many more officers who are protective than ones who are struggling with their work for all people.
Yeah,
So how do we do that?
yeah, it's really tough right now because there is a real distrust of what's happening politically in the world. There is a real distrust of law enforcement. There is a real distrust of the medical establishment. And so now more than ever, as I said during the presentation, we really need to have our talk with our children as to who is safe, how they consider someone to be safe, making sure that they're not dealing with one individual, but several people in an open environment where other people can witness what's going on, instead of getting into, God forbid, into, a police car, by themselves, or, going into, a particular environment that should be an open environment. Those are the talks we should have, how to de-escalate a situation in case that situation gets out of control. But here's the key. The key is also about how our police officers now more than ever have to be involved in community policing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know COVID-19 has kind of brought that back because of the social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually now with the vaccines coming out, people getting vaccinated, we must go back to community policing. We must know who the police officers are, in our precincts. We must, make sure that, when they go into the schools, it's not to police, but it is to go there to talk to kids and, police athletic leagues and all of those other things. They need to be a vital part of our communities and rebuild the trust. And so once that happens, I believe that our children will know where are the safe spaces, where are the safe zones, which stores can they go to or walk into if they feel that they're being followed or something untoward is going on. So all of we've got to have the talk because, quite frankly, now with the world being turned upside down, we see more subway pushings, right? We see, an increase in gun violence, perhaps an increase in muggings. So we've got to really be involved with our kids as to the importance of safety and empowerment strategies.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to, with Dr. BC and Dr. Gorman's permission, wrap it up there. But before that, I have to tell everyone a really funny story about what you're saying about community policing, which I experienced firsthand as an 18-year-old. I had a car. I was in college. I came home for the summer. And I was driving in Harlem to my friend's house. One of my best friends from high school lived in a neighborhood that was not so on a straightforward path. And my car had Florida license plates. And the neighborhood police one day pulled me over and was like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "No, I'm from here. I know it looks kind of shady, but I'm here visiting my friend." But as I visited my friend, I, also visited the neighborhood guys who was standing there on the corner. It was like, "Hey." And so as I drove there every other day or a couple of days, the police would drive behind me and on their loudspeaker, they would say my name, "Monica, what are you doing here?" For the whole neighborhood to hear. And they would say, "I'm going to call your father. Do you want me to call Alfred?" I couldn't believe that they were doing that to me. So the entire summer, they found it hilarious to drive behind my car, say my name aloud, and let everyone know that I had an overprotective father who would come and get me if needed. And it kept me going to her house, getting back in my car, and leaving the block, which is what they wanted. They didn't want me
Right.
around. They were like, you better go back to school. And they would just say it on the walkie-talkie, and everyone sitting outside on the stoop would look, and they were like, isn't school starting? Aren't you supposed to be in school? We're going to call your father. I spoke to Alfred last night. They didn't know my father. When they first stopped me, when I showed them my college ID, they asked me my father's name. I didn't know that's why they wanted my father's name. And the entire summer they did that. But without that, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know. You just don't know. And so that's my funny story about community policing. Talk about community policing. They sure kept me on the straight and narrow.
Well, and that's what we want to see. A lot of people talk about defunding the police, and I think that it is, it can be taken in so many different ways. And when I think about defunding the police, I think about defunding certain things about the police department, not taking the money away and giving it to other organizations, but taking that money and redistributing it to organizations that are affiliated with police departments, or where there's extra training for police departments, or getting social workers involved with being on the force, getting mental health counselors, doing more with community policing, and that's where, I see. So I call it a redistribution of funds. But, that Florida license plate reminds me of one of my favorite performers. You know who that is?
In Florida? No. Who's that?
Flo Rida.
Oh, Flo Rida. Well, I'm much older than Flo Rida, so Flo Rida was probably.
I love Flo Rida.
You like Flo Rida? Oh, well, it was interesting because this was in the 80s. This was not in the 80s, in the late 70s. So you can imagine Harlem in the late 70s, and I'm driving around with a car with Florida license plate, or actually early 80s, and I'm driving around with the car license plate, and when they pulled me over, they just knew what my car was. And I really, to this day, I have never forgotten that relationship that I developed with those three detectives that were in an unmarked car. And it was an unmarked car, but they didn't care about their car being unmarked. It wasn't more important to them that people didn't know who they were, that it was that they were keeping someone, I think, that they felt had potential on the right path, and not let me get distracted. And that's so I think that's my biggest community policing story, and why I've always attracted to that, and why we have to figure out the balance of how we have conversations with students. But thank you everyone for joining. In the chat, there is a reminder of a school giveaway, supply giveaway. I put it in earlier, and then Dr. Gorman put it in again. It's tomorrow at noon at Life Progressive Services Group, 47 South 5th Avenue in Mount Vernon. And there's a telephone number in there. So if you don't see it, it's in there twice. It's earlier. And then we have it again. Dr. Gardia, we're hearing people are saying thank you. And this was an excellent session. It was a nice talk. Dr. Gorman, Dr. BC.
Yes, Dr. Gardia, I enjoyed it so much. And I think a lot of the people who are on definitely enjoy your wonderful presentation. And I'm positive that I'm going to bring you back again, that you can address some other of our stakeholders, because I know this is going to spread around the district, and people are going to say, when I miss this, can I see that? Because I saw it in the chat when somebody said, are you going to post this? So other people are going to hear about it. So you and I, we're definitely going to have some more conversations, and Monica, about coming back to address our social and emotional needs. So
I take a lot of space, so his calendar may be crowded with my counseling.
I know how to push you aside, Monica, and take space from you.
That's why I need counseling.
Thank you, Dr. BC. Just contact Monica, and Monica makes things happen. Not a problem.
I know she's so good. She's so wonderful, and she's like one of us in Mount Vernon. She has always been with us for a very long time, And as I shared the story with other people the other day, that when I met her first, I really did not really like her because she was just on it with me. And I said, oh, then after 2 or 3 sessions, I love her.
We all love her.
And now we're not apart. We are always together because she is a very good individual.
And what a wonderful audience you have. Just wonderful
Yes.
people. And listen, everyone, it was my absolute honor and pleasure to serve you. That's what I'm here for. That's my purpose on this planet, to serve.
Dr. Gorman?
I love your energy. It's really positive and contagious. And some of my takeaways for today has been those little things really matter, right? Just having conversation and talking and listening really matter. And I felt a lot of love coming from you all. So, and I think we sometimes forget all those things because life is so frantic. But the things that we assume, I wouldn't assume. I would do those little things like we've talked about. And together, they really, I think, do support all of us, adults and children. Kids, I believe, always need, they crave rules, even though they don't want to admit that they want them. So on behalf of Dr. Hamilton and the board and all of us, we really thank you. This has been very, very engaging, interactive, and very real. If nothing, as real as it gets, which we pride ourselves on being. Very real. We don't dodge any issues. We're out there. You've identified what's going on. It's scary for everyone.
Yes.
Yep.
But we'll make it through together.
Yeah, yes. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. BC.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. We will see you next month in our next virtual learning module. And we look forward to seeing everyone. This will be posted online on the district's website. Bye now. Bye, everyone. And Happy New Year. Stay safe. Put your masks on.